So we've got this camp thing, or digger, I think they call it. They get three kind of, I think it's 2-day orientation type things that they do during the summer. And he's in the third one because he was accepted into one of the TLCs, one of the learning communities. I think they call it Nucleus, if I remember right, which is the one he wanted to get into. So he's happy about that. And so that's tied into that third camp, which happens to be right before or right during the same week as move-in week. So it kind of fits in really nice for getting him there and not having to go back and forth and making two or three trips. Still haven't decided if we're driving or flying, but we'll probably decide that this weekend now that we actually have dates to deal with.
Hello, I'm Shane Bybee, and for 30 years I've been helping students achieve their college dreams. In that time, I've discovered that success looks different for every student. That's what this podcast is about. What do families need to know to be successful in the college admissions process? Welcome to Let's Talk College. Today I'm joined with what's the preposition I need to use? I'm joined by Al Zito. And Al has the unique perspective that he has just completed this crazy process with his son. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked to Ronell Smith, who was just about getting ready to start the process with his daughter, and now Al's wrapped it up. So Al, let's talk about that college application process and what it is. One of the questions I had for you, just diving in, I guess I'm going to dive right in. You've got a son, graduating class of 21, about to head off to the Colorado School of Mines. What was your process in discovering, because that's not a school everyone has even probably heard of. What was your process in discovering that Colorado School of Mines as an option for Alex?
Well, it was a path. It was a journey. We going back a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, is when it first came on the radar scope. As we were looking at the USA Today ratings and ratings of best engineering schools and all the different online resources that there are to take a look at schools, including Naviance, but that's to a little bit of a lesser extent there. That was more getting into the detail stuff on Naviance. But we started to accumulate a list of schools that were engineering-oriented schools, which is what the direction he wanted to go in, as well as trying to understand from a ranking standpoint which were the best ones to look at. And about, like I said, a year and a half, 2 years ago, Mines came on the radar scope. Our neighbor went to Mines, which helped quite a bit. So he had his recruiting hat on, and one of his two sons, and was very high on Mines after he got to meet Alex and speak with him a bit. He said, "Oh boy, Mines would be a perfect place for Alex." Like Mines, what do you know? And we heard of it, but we hadn't really knew much about it. So we started doing more research on the school, and the more we researched it, the more we liked it, and the more that Alex liked it, which was the most important part. We started putting together a whole bunch of different parameters in regards to the type of schools and the size of schools and where they were and the cost of the school and so on and so forth, which we built into our probably more than necessary analytical spreadsheet. But it helped a lot. It helped a lot, and then we started just coming down the pike. I always do things from a project management standpoint in a funnel. You start here, and then you wind up down at the bottom. So that's how we discovered Mines, but by no means was it the only one. There was quite a few other schools, as we discussed, that Alex applied to.
So what were some of the other schools that he had applied to along the way?
Oh boy, he would Alabama, Auburn, Duke, Vanderbilt, Rice, Texas A&M, UT Austin, Texas Tech, Arkansas, OU, Purdue, Colorado Boulder. I'm missing some, but there were 21 schools, which was
Wow.
insane.
Yeah, that's a big number. I didn't realize it was 21. Well, then of the list, like how many schools did he end up having to choose between? Like really, when he got down to the list and he was looking at these are the schools I'm going to pick. How many schools were on that final? Real serious. I got to pick between these schools.
Coming down the list, it got down to four or five in the last few months. He finally made his decision in April, and I think he had his decision made early April, but his final decision, as it may be, was late April. And it helped that we used the spring break to do some college tours, and we knew Mines was on top of his list, and it was also on top of our list. But we didn't want to influence him. We wanted him to go to the place that he really wanted to go to. So we made our little tour, and part of our tour of our 7 days included 4 days in Golden, Colorado, where Mines is. And he really fell in love with the place. It's just a phenomenal little town. It's the campus is integrated into the town, and it's very walkable. It's easy. It just clicked off a lot of boxes once you saw it.
What were some of the other schools that you visited?
We visited. I forgot to say SMU and TCU as well. We visited SMU, TCU, with that all in all visits. SMU, TCU, Alabama, Auburn, Colorado Boulder, Colorado Mines, Oklahoma.
So you did the nationwide tour. You went on your own little
Yeah.
national tour of colleges.
Mm-hmm.
What was the aspect, if you know from, I mean, not necessarily for Alex, if Alex has shared that with you, but then for you guys, what made Mines such the special place? And I guess I could qualify it a little bit. I was listening to another podcast, and I love the speakers kind of classified, really, there's kind of three things you're going to get out of college, right? You're going to get either an education, you're going to go learn things you don't already know, you're going to get a credential that, you know, if you're a teacher or a nurse or something like that, there's going to be a credential that you come out with. And then you're going to have that experience, right? The collegiality of meeting a professor, connecting with them, connecting with other people in your classes. If it's in those three areas or if it's something else, what made the final decision of Mines the decision that you went with?
We liked the size of the school. That really jumped out at us very much. To be at a school of 58 or 6,300 students, a class, I think a freshman class of 1,100 or 1,200, that really jumped out at us. The only other school that was in the same size standpoint was Rice down in Houston, and we know our son. He was set on A&M for the longest, from freshman year. He did, I forgot the name of the tour, the Howdy tour, the this tour, different things that the alumni did, and he was really set on A&M. And A&M, by all means, has got tremendous engineering credential and a very, off the chart alumni network that there, because it's so big and so many people have gone through it. But one thing that he came back from A&M with over and over again is, Dad, it's a big school. It's a really big school, and not so much big. Can I get from one side to the other? It's just he felt like he was going to get lost there as a student, and we've seen that throughout Alex's academic career as well. That he starts to wander off if he's not engaged with his teacher, and he's had his wonderful teachers and he's had his not so wonderful teachers, and the teachers that he's had that are wonderful, he's continued relationships with years after he's been in their classes. And there were also the classes that he was most successful in because the teacher really engaged him. So we associated the smaller colleges and the smaller class size and so on and so forth. And in the case of Mines, the more specialized college, that it's an engineering college. He also has a stretch applied to MIT as well, but that we knew was the needle in the haystack stretch school. But he very quickly associated, hey, Dad, this is going to be smaller classes. I'm going to get to know everybody. The professors are teaching classes, not students teaching or assistants or whatever the name is of the helpers that help teach some of the classes. So it just started as we started going down our funnel. We started seeing more and more important elements that were particular to Alex. He didn't particularly have a lot of interest in the big school, rah-rah, big football team or big this or big that. He just didn't have much interest in that. He'd go, but that's just not his thing. And what it wound up getting down to is, looking at College Confidential and some other things, is he found, for lack of better words, he found his people. He found an environment that he was going to be comfortable in, and that he felt he was going to flourish in. And Phyllis, Phyllis, my wife, we felt the same way. That we said, boy, what is going to help him be successful in his college career? We knew that for Alex, a more intimate, smaller, private school type setting, which Mines is not a private school, but when you're there and you're on campus and you see how they're put together, it's like a private school. It's amazing. It's amazing facility.
What? So engineering, he's decided to pursue that. How did he come along to that decision? Because again, a lot of people I talk to, the conversation is, well, you're good at math, you should do engineering. Alex is not. I mean, he is good at math. Don't get me wrong, but that wasn't the way the decision was. How did he decide he wanted to pursue engineering?
Alex has been a little engineering and training since he's been a toddler. Between his numerous, gosh-forsaken Lego kits that then grew into more complicated Lego kits, which then grew into robotic Lego kits, and his thirst for learning mechanical things. He's got that aptitude. Has always led him into a STEM direction. He's also one of the, this is the first year of the STEM Academy class that started when Alex, they initiated it over at Carroll when Alex was a freshman. So him and I don't know how many other students were enrolled in that academy, was something he jumped into right at the beginning of his high school career. And like the Carroll Medical Academy, put a curriculum together that was focused, besides having all the general stuff and the required stuff, et cetera, but was focused towards a STEM path. And he really, again, he flourished there, and he developed more and more of his passion of what he wanted to do. Now, if you ask Alex today, he'll say mechanical engineering. I've tried to.
That's going to be my next question.
Yeah, I've tried to pull him back a little bit and say, hey, engineering is such a broad field. Biomedical, chemical, material. There's so many different, petroleum, et cetera. And Mines, like a lot of the other schools, is saying, well, yeah, you're declaring, but you're really not declaring as a freshman. But we definitely want you to be settled in on your sophomore year. So he's going to have a little taste of a few things, and he's opened his mind up a little bit to learning more about some of those other competences, some of those other tentacles of engineering, to see where he really fits. He says he wants to be in robotics. He says he likes AI. So that there's a couple things that overlap: computer science, of course, computer whatever engineering. fits into that as well. And being at Carroll, they've had a wonderful robotics program. They've had a wonderful rockets program. They've had a continued.
Well, that's right. You had a
engineering.
post just the other day. He went off to fire a rocket somewhere.
Yeah, they were down near Fredericksburg in on some farm or something outside of Fredericksburg, Stonewall or something like that. Stone, I don't know, it's just Stone something or the other, outside of Fredericksburg. And these rockets look like ballistic missiles. These things are 6, 7 feet, 6, 7
wow.
feet tall. They're just amazing. There's a statewide competition of sorts that was held every year. That, of course, last year was shanghaied by the COVID situation.
Something happened. I heard about something. Yeah.
Yeah. So last year's launch got Shanghai, but this year's launch went off.
Cool. And then he competed in robotics too in high school.
Yes.
Right. On the robotics team.
Yes.
And that's so when you and I were talking, we were going back over one of the things I found interesting, and I didn't ever really say this to you, but I know the math Alex is taking this year I think he's taking pre-cal this year as a senior, and it is really it's kind of unusual. Like University of Texas has stated, admissions office has stated that in order to get in, they have to see that you're calculus ready in order to get into the engineering, economics, or business school. They have to see that on your transcript. Now, they haven't been clear about what that means exactly. Does that mean you took pre-cal as a senior? If they want the student in, they could call that calculus ready. And right before we started, you mentioned having Alex take a calculus class this summer, maybe at a community college or something like that, in order to get an idea of what calculus is before he gets on campus. One of the interesting facts this year, I just heard last week talking to an IEC that MIT has said that if a student doesn't have calculus BC, that what they're looking for is, does a student have calculus BC on their transcript? Do they get to that level of math? And to get to that level of math by your senior year, you have to be planning what math you're going to take, the math track you're going to take as early as 6th grade.
Yep.
But I started that because the impressive thing about Alex and doing the robotics, doing the rocket class, doing those things, was that he hasn't had calculus AB, and yet he's going to he got into a very competitive engineering focused school that's got their program very, very focused on that. So I'm curious how big a factor that practical experience on his resume made.
I'm sure the practical experience had a very large impact, as well as his work experience. For a high school student to hold the same job for 2.5 years, and and an intern for the 2 years before during the summer, probably had a lot to do with things. Also, his extensive volunteer work that he did. I'm glad that you brought up the math path, because that was something that goes back to wish we would have and knew something and a lot sooner, because Alex wound up getting into a box, and that box wound up being that because it didn't start way earlier, it got him offline in regards to taking calculus this year or taking one of the more advanced math type things by the time he was a senior, and that got thrown off in sixth and 7th grade, and the communication from the ISD was not forthcoming. It wasn't forthcoming because the ISD tends to think that everybody knows everything that they know. Well, if that's not the case, that the parents are relying on resources like your good self and the ISD to make us aware earlier in the process of what may our child need to be successful in his high school career, which then makes him eligible for his college career. So he got off track early.
I looked over their documentation. I looked over their documentation for how they decide which math track. It's confusing. I know if you're sitting on it, it makes sense. If you're on the inside, and it totally makes sense of how the course tree kind of works to direct you into certain classes. But it's confusing, and once you are if once you decide you're on track to do Algebra 2 your sophomore year, if you decide, hey, I need to take Calculus BC my senior year, now it's really tough to double up like geometry and Algebra 2 freshman year and be successful in both and learn them to the degree you need to learn them so that you can be successful when that Calculus BC class comes along. So it really is, it's kind of worries me because you're having to make that decision in like 6th grade about what math to take. And you have to qualify for, a lot of ISDs will say you have to have a certain level of math coming in, and they make it pretty objective. You have to have this math score coming in order to be successful. And if you don't have it, you're not going into this class. And we don't have tracking in this country, but we do have tracking in this country. It's just not a set tracking system.
Well, and if I could interject just for a moment, and teaching a kid more advanced class at 6th and 7th grade has its own challenges itself. So there needs to be a special teacher. There needs to be communication from the ISD or the school district to say, hey, here's what will really put your kid on the right path by the time he's a senior, he or she's a senior, on the math side of the world, or whatever other subjects, but the math was the big one, it seemed. And then there has to be a different type of teacher, or a special type of teacher that's trying to teach algebra to a 7th grader. It's, there may be certain kids that have got that real genius competence and are really talented and gifted and talented, which are great, and that's wonderful, but they're still a 7th grader, and they've got that immaturity that they're not quite getting at that point. What do I want to be?
And I've talked to more than one parent where the frustration is that Algebra 1 class is going to count as a credit or on their GPA down the road. So if you don't have a 7th grader who understands that you have to make, because it's twofold, right? The most important factor is GPA, and I've got a student I'm working with right now where we're going to tackle the fact that she started taking advanced math classes in 7th grade, didn't fully understand that they were going to track. So if she'd understood, she might have chose a different path. But she's done great since. She's put it all together since. So that's getting that communicated to a middle schooler who, up until now has been like, oh, middle school grades don't count on your overall transcript. Well, that class does. So helping them communicate that.
And that was one of the
process
reasons, that was one of the reasons when we saw the math trail, that was one of the reasons we decided, not knowing the implications of the consequences, hey, is Alex really ready for a high school class to count towards his GPA? So we're looking at pieces, but we're not getting the whole picture, which, we need all the facts to make the right decision. A parent does, and a kid does.
Yeah. Well, thinking about the last year, just the last year of the application process and having conversations with you over that time, I know it hasn't all been butterflies and bunny rabbits, getting everything turned in on time, things like that. Looking back at it now, what are things you wish that would have made the process easier, would have made the process better? Anything like that?
Oh boy, organization. And the other piece that we had trouble with, which I'm sure many other parents have, is keeping their student motivated to get things done. Dad's as I like to refer to myself, I'm a Mr. Yesterday. Get it done yesterday. Get it done, get it out of the way, move on to the next thing. Alex is Mr. Mañana. I'll get it done by maybe by the time the deadline is there, maybe I'll get it done. And that's plagued him for years in classes and during this process. So the organization and having a project plan is really critical. Whether you apply to 3 schools, 6 schools, or 21 schools, it becomes it's exasperated by all the other things you need to do besides just doing the application to the school. There's the honors college applications, there's all the scholarship applications, there's whatever particular other programs that each school may have that are specialized for them. Like many schools now are, they have a 5-year to MBA type program that they'll optimize the curriculum while the students in the first 4 years, maybe even with some summer classes, et cetera, to allow them in 5 years to graduate with an MBA, which is a very, very attractive thing. But again, you got to apply for that and get accepted into that path. Some schools it's automatic, but other schools you have to apply and get accepted. So there's a whole bunch of other tentacles that go past just the initial college application, and then keeping track of everything, of what date is which, and who's deciding early, and who's deciding this, and who's deciding that, and trying to keep track of what the colleges are doing, which this year has been very tough on not just the parents and the students, but the colleges, because they've had such an overwhelming amount of applications that are much higher than they've seen in the past, because of this quote-unquote holistic view of looking at things with or without test, ACT or SAT type stuff. So it's
been the fun.
Yeah.
On my side, the fun talk about that is how has that test optional pathway affected overall applications, and how's it going to affect it in the future? University of Georgia has already said, all right, folks, we're going back to requiring test scores. And you're seeing, and then of course you have the UC system, which announced last week that they're not going to require that. Not only are they not requiring test scores, they're refusing test scores. They will not look at test scores for any applicant, at least until 2025.
That's interesting.
So it's, when they have a million applications they have to go through. I'm not sure how they're going to. I know how they're going to do it. You and I both know how they're going to do it. They're going to have some kind of algorithm that sifts through and then apportions certain places to different things. That does it because there's just no way that you can go through that many applications. So mine was an early choice. I was going to ask you something else about that. You talked about the school size. I was talking with a student yesterday, and we made the comment to him about a smaller school, and he was like, I don't want to go to a smaller school. But as we were talking, he had, when he heard smaller school, he was thinking like the same size as his high school, 2,000 students at his high school or whatever. And we were like, no, this school has, his particular school is a private school. He had 500 students at his school. We're like, no, this school's going to have 6,500 students at it. Like it's significantly larger. But knowing that, like, what's the environment that's going to be right? Did Alex apply for one of those 5-year MBA programs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He did? Is that the plan then, to go 5 years?
That's the plan. That's the plan. He
no plan ever exists.
The plan as it exists today. There's so much unknown to that, because right now
he is going to be in Golden, Colorado.
Yeah, but there's so much unknown to that, because depending on which competency winds up going, a different graduate school may come into focus as he's going down that path. But as of right now, yes, 5 years with the MBA type scenario is what he's.
Will he get a college? But he'll get a BS en route. Like, it's not a terminal MBA program. He'll get a BS degree first and then go into an MBA program.
That's a good question. I think that it's BS by the time, it maybe even be before the 4 years, because there's an accelerated MBA curriculum. So the BS, I'm just concluding, it's probably going to be graduated before his normal 4 years, and it's going to be overlapping, I think, with the rest of the programs, then to accomplish the MBA portion. At least that's the way it's been explained to us.
Is he going into college with any college credit in his pocket, like from dual credit classes or AP exams or anything like that? Is he getting any credit for those?
Yes. Matter of fact, we just saw an email the other day on that. He's got 3 or 4. I think he's got 4 AP classes under his belt, and this year, he Alex, he went into the dual credit English, and then he said, "Nah, I really don't want to do that." so he didn't do the dual credit English. So we didn't get that situation, which I'm not sure. I know that was a little unclear. I know how the AP classes are counting, but I'm not sure how the dual credit at TCC would have or would not have counted, because that does or doesn't apply to every college
And
scenario.
it definitely doesn't. The private schools, it's a little more iffy. A public university, it'll typically transfer, but yeah, it definitely is a factor. Well, let's talk about the timeline, because and really I want to. Because what's a mystery to a lot of people is the spring timeline. Like we get well defined what the fall timeline is, about what the deadline is for applications to be in, FAFSA, all of that. Those deadlines, it's not that they're super clear. People still need to be informed of them, but once you've passed that deadline, a lot of people, it's a black box, but you've just gone through that. So out of that list of 21 schools, roughly how many did Alex get accepted to?
13 of them, I think, 14
Okay.
of them. And then there's
Did
a
you
few
get-
that came on later that after May 1st, all of a sudden we started getting, oh, you're accepted, oh, you're accepted, oh, you're accepted. And Alex was like, it's too late. Yeah, I've already made my decision. And now they're saying they want me. Why did they want me for 6 months ago? So
And because
all that.
they
Yeah, they
got
had
their own
open
list
spaces.
down.
They had open spaces, and all that did for Alex was piss him off, and honestly his dad off as well.
Yeah. Oh, last year when everything went sideways, we saw situations where schools were going back. I don't know if Alex may have been waitlisted at those schools instead of accepted. We saw places where they were going back and they had denied students, and they were calling students up and going, "Hey, we've reconsidered." Or this happened for a lot of students in the UT system. UT had offered students like places in the CAP program. Well, they were coming back and saying, "Okay, we offered you CAP, but we have a space for you at the Austin campus now if you want it." So there was a lot of stuff like that was going on last year.
And that happened. That happened with
how
us.
many-
That happened
How
with
many
us.
of those schools?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
He was not initially accepted at UT or A&M, yet he was accepted at Purdue and Mines and Boulder. It made no sense, that some schools that were, whatever you want to say, lower, not as difficult to get in. Okay, fine, but when he's starting to get accepted into Urbana and Purdue and Mines, and we were looking at his home schools, and he wasn't accepted there. He's blend and capped. And then then one came back and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, after May," they said, "Yeah, we have a space." It's like, no, sorry.
He got into Urbana-Champaign. That's awesome. That's a great school for engineering and science. That's cool.
He didn't want to
What
go
I
there
was asking, so
because it was near Chicago.
Yeah.
First he said it was too cold. I said, "Well, it's cold in Colorado, Alex." And he said, I just don't want to be there."
Yeah, that's Illinois cold. That's not like Colorado cold. It's a different kind of cold.
that cold coming off with that lake is just it's pretty cold.
But so did you get financial award letters from very many schools? Like, what was that process like? That's a part of it that I'm not super familiar with either. Like, I've seen financial award letters, but how many of those schools that he got accepted to did they actually say, "Here's how much it's going to cost"?
All right. Sorry about that. I apologize. I will pick it up and hang up as quick as possible. Sorry, whoever that was. Don't know who it was. He for all the schools that he got accepted to early on, November, December, January, they all came with substantial scholarships or awards or whatever may have you. Funny to note, or not funny to note, was all of the, or many, not all, of the out-of-state schools, they came with, they had all different names for them, and some of them stacked different things. Brought the out-of-state down to right about the in-state level within those states, and then some went way further and made some very generous offers, which for Dad made looking at mines going, you really want to go to mines? Because it's almost free over there, and it all turned out the way that it did. But all of them came with offers that were the school offers. There was also, and this was another area that we had a little trouble keeping our student motivated, was apply for scholarships. Apply for scholarships. Whether they were local scholarships, the $500,000 type thing, or the school scholarships. A lot of them you apply when you submit your initial application. Then there's others that open up after you submit the application, and then there's others that seem to open up at different timing once you get accepted to the school. And it's a lot. It's another whole application. It's essays. It's so on and so forth, and that's where the one college application turns into 20 applications underneath it, and then hoping and looking to either get accepted into the honors college of the particular college, get into a MBA program as we were just discussing, or getting money, getting actual assistance from whichever scholarship destination or scholarship activity that's there. Some colleges had a general, and then they had a specific engineering scholarship. I know that a few of them were really pushing the computer science side of things, and said, well, apply to this, but it's really for computer science, not mechanical or petroleum. It's computer science companies that they were trying to get them in. So there was the black hole, or the black portion, was then filled with filling out scholarship applications, and also for each school, which was easier than the scholarship applications, was applying to each of their honors colleges as well.
And that process can be different for schools too, because some schools are just like when you submit your initial application, they have a box. Do you want to be considered for the honors college? You check it yes or no. A&M's like that. You check it yes or no, and then they consider you as it goes through the process. Where other schools, it is you can only apply for the honors college after you're accepted. And that's the part that's really tough, especially for parents who haven't been through the process at all. Like, I think you and your wife are both college educated, so you've kind of been through the process. You know, at least, like, it's a lot different than when we got our college degrees, right?
It's night and day. It's night and day.
So, but at least you know, like, that's going to be something else. It's something to be expected. We were talking, and I know you've talked with Mines a couple of times, and it sounded like they came with like one offer, and like this is going to be your financial. This is going to be the financial award statement, and then you went back to them, and then they came up with some more money. Did I understand that correctly? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you do an official appeal on that, or did you do something else?
They may have considered an official appeal. I didn't fill out a form that said official appeal on top of it. There was communications that Alex had with his college counselor, who was just dynamite. His college counselor really took Alex under her wing, which was just tremendously helpful, both from conversations that they were having, and Alex, try this and do this, and then she was coming up with suggestions and guidance, and she was just wonderful, just absolutely wonderful.
Is this somebody from Mines, or is this somebody local that you worked with?
She was the counselor at Mines. His
Okay.
assigned college admissions counselor. I may have the
Awesome
title wrong, but she
Yeah.
a Mines in admissions at Mines, and she was very helpful with him, because she saw the Mines award was less than all the other schools. It still was one of their premium awards, but mine I'm associating because it's so much of a smaller school and a specialized school. It's got a higher higher cost for that school than just up the street up at Boulder. Boulder is a very, very large school, so there's probably some efficiencies that they have being such a much larger school than Mines did. So the actual cost for education at Mines was more expensive, and the award was thinner. That was noticeable in regards to the net cost of what Mines would be comparatively to the other schools, which was an important consideration for us. So Alex went back to, I really want to go to Mines. I'd love to go to Mines, and he was very transparent about his desires, and he said, I need more help. I just need more help to make what my parents have budgeted and so on and so forth, to have it make sense for me to come there. I need to narrow the gap a little bit. So they went back and reconsidered, and I'm sure it had something to do with as well. I gather each school has got a pool of scholarship money that they will offer, and they're probably looking for a net revenue from the incoming student body that's coming. At least this is the way I'm associating from a business standpoint. So while the cost is this, they're really looking at, hey, this is what we're really going to get out of our student body. And in order to do that, they're putting money and awarding money to people that have applied early and so on and so forth, but and that have got different eligibility criteria, which we're going to talk about one in a moment, that then fits into their boxes of, okay, this student fits into this scholarship or this amount of scholarship. The bronze, silver, or gold, or the president and the provost, they all have different names. Mm-hmm. They went back and they were able to they brought it up a reasonable amount that then narrowed the gap quite a bit for Alex, mm-hmm. which helped significantly in making the final decision. One of the things that comes into mind is the ACT and the SAT score. If he did not, I mean, we have to fight our way to getting those done this year, especially during the summer. And we found some shortcuts, and we found some ways.
Oh, you had a crazy time with the SAT last year.
Oh my gosh, it was insane. And getting.
Didn't you drive to Wichita Falls or Decatur or something a couple of times?
We were all over the place. We were all the way up by north of Allen, some little school up there. We were down at Decatur a few times, and he took the SAT and the ACT, and it was difficult taking the test. And even when we would get cancellations the night before, it was just insane. It was just really insane. And then there was no communications from SAT and ACT. They were just horrendous. They were just flipping horrendous. So then we figured out which we communicated with you. We figured out I don't want to say a shortcut, but an alternate way to get in, that we were tracking the schools that were giving it ACT or SAT the days or mornings that he was taking. And if he got a cancellation, we would go to that school and stand in line. And lo and behold, every single time we did that, he was able to get in and take that test. Whereas if we just would have accepted it's canceled tomorrow, or he's canceled, not the test was canceled, he's canceled tomorrow.
Yeah.
We would have had a little bit of a harder time. We learned that down at UT Arlington. We got canceled the night before with 34 other people, and they've got these huge lines, of course 6 foot spaced, outside waiting to get in, and with their ticket. Which we had the ticket, but then it was canceled the night before. We had the ticket for months before, after being canceled 2 or 3 times during early COVID. So then, after everybody was in, all the people were standing out there going, "What's going on?" They didn't even know they were canceled because SAT didn't say anything, didn't send any email, didn't have any communication. So if you had the ticket that you printed off 2 months before, you were there thinking, I'm going to take the SAT. The only reason we found out about it is I went and logged in that evening before and was looking at it, and something looked funny on the website, but there was no email, no communication. So we then sat there for a few moments, and I went inside and spoke to the proctor or proctors, and because they were confused as well. They're like, why are these people here? They're not on the list. I said, well, yeah, but they all have tickets. I said, do you have extra, are they able to get in? Do you have room? Because speaking with SAT the night before, they said that University of Arlington told them that they don't have room and they don't have proctors. Well, then you speak to the proctors at the University of Arlington, and he said, who told you we have no room? We have plenty of room. We have plenty of proctors. It's like, yeah, okay, seems like left isn't talking to right. So they admitted those 34 students, and they were all able to take that test that day, which was a good thing. But it was just added more stress on top of stress, which was not enjoyable.
Yeah,
but importance though is while schools in California or wherever may be saying that they're not accepting test scores or not using test scores, the test scores were critical for the scholarship stuff. They were critical. Mm-hmm. That the scholarship stuff basically they were saying, well, yeah, we're looking holistically at this, that, and the other thing, and you don't need your test scores. But then when it came to the scholarships, if you didn't have X score or you didn't have score submitted, you weren't even considered for a scholarship. Mm-hmm. So we're really glad that we pushed it and we were tenacious in regards to getting that done, and Alex was successful in getting decent scores, which then qualified him at all these schools to getting the awards that he was given.
I was looking at Alabama this morning, and I have looking for some stuff, doing some research for some things, and Alabama even has, so at Alabama right now, out-of-state tuition, if you have a core GPA of 3.7 or above, and I think it's like a 32 ACT, maybe a 1400 SAT, I forget the exact score cutoff, but you automatically, it's like not competitive at all. It's an automatic $28,000 a year off of out-of-state tuition. It's that test score. The other thing that's not been said to some people, and I've had 2 people who have contacted me with this, is that they started to sign up for classes for next year, but because they didn't take an SAT or an ACT, they're now having to take remedial classes, or back up, because they didn't submit an SAT or ACT score. The school automatically enrolled them, or would not let them enroll in freshman level classes. They were having to enroll in remedial classes for English and math. And it was 9 hours of college credit they were going to have to take. But in both of those cases, because the student had taken the SAT and had qualified to take dual credit classes, the student was able to say, no, I have a qualifying SAT score. I can be exempt. But I think there's going to be a lot of parents who show up, a lot of kids who show up to register. Back to this idea that they don't know how far in advance things need to happen. They're going to start signing up for classes, and they're suddenly going to have 9 extra hours of no credit remedial classes they have to take, which is just right off the bat a $4,000 price tag that they're going to have. That if they could get an SAT or ACT, there's a June SAT coming up, there's a July ACT coming up before next school year starts. If they could get a test in there and make a minimum score, just taking that test is going to save them $4,000 next semester if they don't have it. Well, there's been some definite tomfoolery go on this year.
There really has, and I believe in transparency and honesty. And we had our counselors here saying, well, all the colleges, because we had the problems with how they did grading in the last 7 weeks of when COVID started, and that was a whole nother tug of war of stuff. That, well, all the colleges aren't going to be looking at GPA, they're not going to be looking at tests, not going to be looking at that. They're going to just look holistically at the student. And I'm looking at them and go, I thought these substances were not legal to have on school premises. What are you talking about? Then you go talk to the college counselors, and they'll say outright, yeah, holistic, blah, blah, blah. But then you get them to the side when they're not in front of a crowd. They said, of course we're going to look at SAT and ACT scores first. Mm-hmm. But we have to. But we're in a box. We don't know if every kid's going to We don't know how many kids will be able to have or not have these things, and we need to fill our admissions roles. So if we have no student that's able to take ACT and SAT, we can't just not have a freshman class. We'll have to look at them in a different way. And of course, GPA then became one of the prime, as it always is, one of the prime evaluation things. So holistic, that's a bad word. Very, very bad, Jerry. Very bad. You're very bad.
And the funny thing about that is they'll say it's holistic so that it's more objective, right? Because the test scores are so subjective, or the SAT or the GPAs, and so we're going to have a holistic scoring. Well, the holistic scoring itself, because of the way they do the holistic scoring, they most schools now they'll read the essay and they'll rate the essay on whatever scale they have, 6-point scale, 4-point scale, and then they'll put that into the calculation, and it is a somewhat mathematical calculation of how many points do they get for their test score, how many points do they get for their GPA, how many points do they get for their essays and for their letters of recommendation, and then they just calculate that and use it. So again, to say that it's holistic and we're looking at the whole student, well, it's holistic in that they're coming up with a mathematical score for every student, but that's the only way to manage that many applications. If you have, I'd have to look up Mind's actual numbers on acceptance rates, but if they have 7,000 students that enroll, they probably accept 14,000, and if they, because of just yield or more, back up. They have, 1,500 freshmen. So they probably accept something like 6,000 freshmen out of a pool of 12,000. If you have an admission staff of 12 and you got to go through 12,000 applications in between November or December 1st and, March 1st or so, that's a huge ask. And so you need those numbers and those ways to do it. Well, it's been an hour. You've spent an hour of time, almost an hour now. We're closing in on that. What is advice that you would give for parents going into this process now? Things that, and we talked a little bit about takeaways from it, but what's the thing you would be telling them? We talked about being organized. Anything else?
The prep that we didn't know. Another thing that was another little secret was to prep and to be prepared for PSAT and the equivalent ACT, but the PSAT we didn't know how critical that was in regards to then being eligible as a national merit type thing, and also the preparation that the school was giving to students that had over so-and-so PSAT score. That it's like, well, why aren't you telling this to everyone? And oh, by the way, why aren't you helping every student at Carroll with SAT prep, as far as the specialized prep that they were doing, not your type of prep, but what the school was doing. So to take that PSAT as early as possible, to prep for it and take it as early as possible. I'm not sure to take PSAT more than once, but if you can, okay, fine. And then
for national merit, you can only take it the one time.
That's what I thought. So to prep for that test, in the same manner as prepping for the SAT. That to try and get that score up over a reasonable threshold, then or the reasonable threshold that then opens up doors for the student. The second thing is with the SAT and the ACT both, whichever that the student decides to do, or both, however it may be, take it as often as possible. Take it as often as possible until the student is satisfied with the score that they're going to have. Because some schools super score, some schools don't. And at the end of the day, the higher the score on the SAT, the higher the score on the ACT, opens doors. Opens doors with admissions and opens doors with scholarships. And some that are just automatic, as you explained with Alabama. That, hey, if you do this and this, you get that. Well, $28,000, right? I mean, Alabama was one of Alex's serious considerations, and they threw the kitchen sink at him. They threw that at him. They threw an engineering scholarship at him. They threw something else. It was almost a free ride for him at Alabama, which was very attractive for him and for us. But a college decision isn't just financial. It's what's the student going to get out of it, and what school he's going to go to, et cetera. So it's the prep. Take the test as often as possible. You spend the 35 or 45, whatever it is, dollars to take the test, and take it as often as possible and earlier. Don't wait. Don't wait until besides COVID last year, don't wait till the spring of junior year to be taking your first test. Take it earlier. And it just gets it helps that student be more comfortable with the environment, helps them be more comfortable with what the test is going to be. Again, the test changes, as you know, with each time they look at it, but the scores tend to go up, as we saw with Alex, and I think you've seen with a lot of your clients. The scores tend to go up over time, and that's exactly what wound up happening with Alex, and we were which opened up doors for him.
I'm curious about something. So, we talked about this a little bit, but Alex, largely because of COVID and the closing down of the schools, ended up not taking the test at his home campus. He ended up having to go other places. And every now and then I talk to parents about that, like, should we take it at our home campus? Should we go somewhere else? And Alex never took one at Carroll ISD or at his high school, as far as I know.
Yeah. He tried.
Do you think that was any kind of factor? I'm maybe overthinking that at some point, but that may be too strategizing. But getting out of an environment where you're comfortable, where you have kind of your automatic things, because the hardest part about test prep, kids don't have. It's not a mystery. Standardized tests are not a mystery to them nowadays, right? They've taken plenty of standardized tests, and they've developed certain habits as they go into them. And when we start working with a kid, one of our things is we have to undo some of those habits, or we have to teach some new habits. And then getting a student to do those new habits, we put some things in place, try to put some things in place to say, hey, remember all of these things we've talked about before you go into actual test day. Do you think that had any kind of factor in it? Did you even think about something like that?
Yeah, we did. Our initial thought was, hey, get them at Carroll, or if not Carroll, over at Grapevine or Trophy Club or someplace close. Which I think is probably the norm. And we associated him going to Carroll or taking the test at Carroll that he would be more comfortable. Alex is kind of an independent, and every student's different, every kid's different. Alex, he's just an independent type of person. So when it came down to him going to anywhere else, it didn't matter to him at all. What did matter is getting up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever in the morning to drive all the way to Timbuktu to be able to get on campus at 8 o'clock or whenever the test would start, and leaving a little bit of elbow room for whatever. So that was not enjoyable. But Phyllis and I made a day trip out of it, and while Alex was taking his test, we went and found some local breakfast place and this and that. And
I think you know all the good breakfast places in this part of the DFW area. You've got them all.
Absolutely, and now expanding out to 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours away as well.
So, all right, man. Thank you so much for spending some time. I hope the audience found some good ideas, some good insights from it. And thank you for giving that. It's real fresh. And good luck to Alex. Are you at all concerned, because Golden, Colorado is known for one other product out there? Is there any concern about, how are you inoculating Alex against the combination of beer and a lack of parental supervision that he's going to discover next year?
We're doing our best. Yes, the Coors is located at Golden, Colorado, and it's got a very large brewery there. And our neighbors already told us about a certain elevator that people would go up and get into the employee cafeteria, which had an open tap of Coors. So we haven't told that to Alex, but Alex is very resourceful, so I'm sure he'll figure these things out. So we're doing our best to, parenting is a hard thing, as we know, and we do our best to instill the right values and what's important. But at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do. hopefully they just do it where they don't get in trouble or they don't do anything stupid. That's the big thing. But he's never been a big partier guy, but who knows? With the new freedom and so on and so forth that he's going to have out far away, we'll see how that all works out. Hopefully he'll manage that accordingly. He seems to be very focused on, or he says he's being very focused, but Alex is good at saying things, but then we got to make sure he follows up with actual actions. He's very focused with understanding what his first priority is. And we say, yeah, we want you to have fun, but fun can't be the 90% first thing that you do, and everything else doesn't matter. The responsibilities have to come first, and then the fun gets balanced in there as you can. So we're very wishful for him. We're very excited for him. We're very proud of him. We're so thankful to you and how much you helped him along the process. So thank you very much again for that. I know he would not have been as successful with his SAT scores if it wasn't for the prep that was able to be accomplished with your operation.
You have to apologize
Hang
again.
up. I'm sorry about that.
So,
sorry for whoever that was.
Well, thanks.
Again.
Maybe you can find that caller ID and give him a call back real quick. Thanks,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to
I'm
hearing
sure
about his success.
We are excited for him, and I'm sure he will be,
Yeah.
because he's going to be with his people. He's going to be in an environment that's conducive to what works for him, and I think that's really important in whatever college that whoever picks that their kid is going to be in a place that works for them. Not just because it's got a big football team or whatever may have you. The big football team's great and rah-rah on those days, but the college education isn't all about going to a football game. It's that's part of the fun stuff, and that's great, but it's not the only reason to choose a school. Except for maybe those college athletes that get recruited and get scholarships to do that. Then
That's a different.
it works well for them. But thank you very much. I appreciate everything you've done, and this is a fun talk. Happy to have done it.
Thanks for sitting down with me, man.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the podcast, it would help us reach more people if you could rate and review the show wherever you listen and share it on social media. If you have ideas for future episodes, please email me at shane@biblecollegeprep.com. Thanks for listening.